Okay, Ross, like I said, we're in the Racing Post offices at the minute for the reason being that you've timed it. You were down here from Leeds, where you live, to do In the Know with Paul Kealy and Tom Segal. So two very shrewd men there, three very shrewd men. So, tell us a bit about that for people that haven't watched it.
See, but that's the joy you picked up on. What the joy is that when I first started doing it, so it's big festivals, Friday nights. Basically, yeah, it's kind of essentially it is a betting preview show, but part of it is, getting to absolute veterans of the game. People like your Keels and your Segals who have done. Again, if I've watched tens of thousands of races, they've watched twice as much, and kind of putting them to the test, and I love it. I think it's really good. Again, I come away from that thinking, God, I'd love to. We should do this all the time. And then Keel says, "Speak for yourself, mate. I've got loads of copy to write." Still never met Tom Segal though. I've worked with him for 3 years and I've never actually met him in person.
Won't do an interview either.
I mean, he won't leave the house. So
I'll go to him, but he still won't do it.
No, I'll try and convince him. He won't come in. It's really good. Again, the interaction is fantastic. That's the big thing I love. It's not about. You can watch it and disagree with everything we say and go and place your own bets, and that's half the fun. People get involved in the chat. The comments are really good. I'll go on and reply to the comments. People will think that we're slagging me off, and I wasn't going to read it, but then I go and reply to them, and they go, "Love the show, really." It's quite funny. It's amazing. People say don't read the comments, but you should just reply to them nicely. It sorts them right out. But yeah, no, it's really good, and so I'm in there to do that. So me and Keels have been there. It's weird. I've generally spent more time with them than my closest family over the past few years. So Keels doesn't like me calling him Uncle Keels because he says he's not old enough to be my uncle, but it still does feel like that. So yeah, but that's been going for a few years now. It's again, I like bouncing the ideas off each other. It's really good.
And the other thing you do is Raceshare.
Yeah, that's a relatively recent one. Which is a new microshare syndicate. Been going about 18 months. And basically, I kind of had one of these conversations with, he's on the website, you won't mind, but Patrick Veach, who we've obviously done a very good interview with.
And a follow-up questions and answers.
And I've watched them. I've definitely watched them. So we had a conversation once, and I was talking about content, and I was saying that horse racing is 10 years behind everything else because it is online content-wise. What you're doing right now should be, when other sports are doing this times 10, and racing's still a bit like, I feel like a lot of people in racing are still a bit like, yeah, but the internet, it's a fad, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I feel a bit like people are still like think it's going to disappear. So the point of Raceshare was that I was a bit sceptical because I've heard people be a bit weird about microshare syndicates because, well, you're buying a horse for this and you're syndicating it for that. But I've owned horses. I've owned 2 or 3 horses where I've had like 50, 25% share in them, and it cost us a lot of money, and we didn't get the access that you get if you join a microshare syndicate. But the point was to try and do things. So we do a live stream when people can't get to the races, so you've got that community. But you get economies of scale. Your average racing fan can't afford to buy an 80 grand handicapper with Andrew Baldwin and go and visit the horse 3 times a year. And I was genuinely a bit like, okay, I'm not sure this is my thing. But then when I actually got into it, I was like, this is actually fantastic. And it is honestly the most positive experience I've had in racing, working in racing, because everyone loves it. You turn up at the stable visits, racing needs to get more of this. It needs to get people to go and see the horses, take people to the stables, because they're magical places, and the horses are incredible animals, and they're like, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Going to in being on the gallops in the sunshine, watching. Oh yeah, that's long press. Yeah, just pottering up the hill. That if someone goes to see that, they're in racing for life. And if you get them in when they're 10, 11, 12, 13 and they see that, that's how you get young people into racing. Is you just go, here are the horses, here are the stables, and that's the joy of that. So I create content for that. I do stuff with Ollie Bell, and we do various bits and bobs, and it's just trying to get that experience of being an owner in a big yard, but for 40, 50 quid or whatever. And yeah, there's a percentage profit built into it, but that's because it's a business. And I don't think people understand how much work goes in to organising this stuff behind the scenes. And people will say, oh yeah, but this, that and the other. And it's like, there's less profit built into this than going to buy a coffee. And you're getting a great, this sounds like a promo, but it's genuinely, it's just lovely to meet other people having a good time, because so often especially in this, it's people, saying you tipped me a loser, or, I can't believe this odds-on shot's got beat.
Right, talking about people, characters in the racing game is never short of them.
Yeah.
Tell us about Fatty Foulkes, the England goalkeeper, and Billy Foulkes, the Sheffield gambler. And we've got about 10 minutes left.
All right, great. Okay, right, let's rattle through this. Right, so I didn't know this when I got into it, when I got into racing and betting. My family kind of snuck this in years later. They went, oh, by the way, your nan's brother was a gambler. And I was like, all right. And he's like, yeah. He used to own that flat. He was one of the first ones to buy one of those new flats up there. And I'm like, you've never told me this. I've worked in racing and betting for like 5, 6, 7 years. You've never brought this up. And apparently, my nan's brother, Billy Foulkes, was like a proper one, one of the faces in the ring. And people, when I wrote that in a column in the Racing Post, and people would message me on Twitter saying, God, yeah, I know Billy. Like, we don't see his like around anymore. I never actually met him because he must have passed away, or I must have been very young. But yeah, he was apparently like a proper punter. Like I said, my nan used to say, rich one minute, poor the next. That kind of
variance.
What's that?
Variance.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. But yeah, I remember. Probably can tell this story.
If he's dead, you can tell the story.
Yeah, that's true. I just remember my nan or my mum saying that he apparently was playing away from his partner once, and he came back to the flat and found that she'd set fire to the curtains, melted all his records, and glued all the locks up. That's the story I remember about him. But apparently he was a very good punter. So it obviously runs in the blood. I just didn't know it.
We better move on to Fatty Foulkes.
Yeah. Well, so he is officially the heaviest footballer to ever play professional football. There's footage of him on YouTube from sort of 1901, 1902, and it is phenomenal. And he is like, so there was an unveiling of a plaque in at Blackwell Colliery last week. I couldn't go because bloody sinusitis. But he was like, proper legend of the game. Couple of caps. The only player to ever swing off a crossbar and break it mid-match. Apparently, law goes that he invented ball boys because they put 2 boys next to the goal to make him look even bigger when strikers were through on goal. And while they were there, he was like, can you go and get the ball for me? And then people were like, we should do this. But then afterwards, he ran a pub. He was a county cricketer as well, and apparently used to take a few bets on the side as well. But yeah, like I said, it's obviously in the blood. I've often wondered how I latched onto this, but it was obviously genetic.
Now then, moving swiftly on again. You said that you were a stand-up comedian. Well, I suppose you always are a stand-up comedian. You were at the Edinburgh Fringe even.
Yeah, I did. I've done 2 years. I did 3 shows, 2 years, 2 shows in 1 year, which was the stupidest thing I've ever done. And then I had to have pretty much a month sat down in a darkened room after that. But yeah, no, we did a show. Me and my friend Josh did a show called the Not So Late Show, which is like a comedy. My dream was always to be Vic and Bob when I was a kid. I always wanted to be Reeves and Mortimer. And actually, probably the reason I'm sat here talking to you now is that we did a video called UK Garage Horse Racing.
That was actually on Twitter yesterday. Somebody was tweeted it. It's about 8 years old, is it?
It's still going, yeah, and we still don't get credit for it.
Yeah.
We uploaded it at 10 o'clock in the morning, went to get a cup of coffee, came back, and the computer had crashed because we got so many notifications. Someone stole it, put it on their Facebook page, got millions of followers. No one knows it's us. Everyone goes, you did that. Someone once showed it to me and went, have you seen this? And I'm like, yeah, I made it. And they're like, what? But yeah, so we did comedy, and then I did a show about betting and gamble as well called Accumulator back in 2018. Again, it's amazing when you do that. I did that at Edinburgh every day. Some of the people that came to, professional poker players, what's his name? Keith, the camel. What's his name? Can't remember his surname.
It's just called Keith the Camel, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. He came in, and you'd meet people who'd come in and talk about it, and yeah, I don't know. It was really interesting. Doing jokes about that kind of stuff because it's not something anyone else really. There's one of the comedians, a guy called Ken Cheng, who's a professional poker player and a comedian, but he doesn't do jokes about it. And in hindsight, yeah, it was quite the experience.
Right, this is going to be you. I'm not rushing you here, but
I'm going
to get this bit in.
Crack on.
You firmly believe, you touched on it earlier, about you firmly believe that racing's missing a massive trick with online engagement. So can you said they're a decade behind other sports. I know you said we should be doing more things like this, so luckily we've stolen a march. But what do you think racing could and should do that they aren't doing at the moment?
So there's a few things I think people miss, right? So YouTube, I think people still think is like a kids platform where people are doing beauty reviews or whatever. It's a full-blown media. And the Racing Post do some fantastic shows on it. And everyone now, since lockdown in particular, was like, we need to get a YouTube show. But we should be doing, if you're into racing, you should be able to watch a stream at any point where you should be able to watch the racing. You should be able to interact with people. There should be podcasts, there should be video podcasts, there should be live streams, there should be stable visits. The mystique around horse racing and betting and stables and trainers and jockeys, it's getting a lot better now, and people are making some fantastic stuff. There's some really, really good stuff. But it should be the bedrock of getting people into it, because people are working from home nowadays. That audience is there. Right now, we could do a live stream with the kind of graphics that they were using on TV 10 years ago, and it would take us 10 minutes to set up, and after a while, you get thousands of people watching. You should be doing that. That's how you convert people into it. You get people to watch it. Community. Don't read the comments and all this is nonsense. You should be encouraging people to comment, and you should be replying to them. Build a community. Make people think or feel that they're part of the game. There's still a barrier between horse racing and people who are into horse racing, and it's still a bit like, oh, we want you to get into racing, but we want you to get into racing in our way, and you can't really cross that barrier. We know what we're doing. And that's not online. It has broken down those barriers now in all sorts of other sports, and there should be millions and millions of people watching and interacting with horse racing content and getting involved and feeling like they're after their own. And you should be teaching. This is the other big thing as well that I hate about it. You're expected to know what a speed figure is. You're expected to know what a handicap rating is. You're expected to know what's the difference between 7 furlongs and 10 furlongs.
Even what a furlong is.
Even what a furlong is, exactly. When you actually dig into it, I say, so again, we have a joke with my missus, and I'm like, what are you doing today? She's like, I've got a lot of meetings. And I'm like, yeah, me too. There's 5 on, Sandown's the big one. and there's all this stuff. And even those things, people, she'll watch me sometimes doing a show just to check, that I haven't died or whatever. And she'll go, I didn't understand a single word you were saying. Where is that online resource that if you want to get into the game, you go on and you can learn? It's an open goal because it's so easy to make, and you just have to press upload afterwards. And I think we're missing a trick.
Well, hopefully somebody's watching this in the BHA Ross and they'll get on that. Anyway, thanks for your time, Ross BRIERLEY. Thank you very much.
Anytime, mate.